When you first look at this, it almost feels unreal. One of those moments where you pause and think, wait a second, is this actually happening? Or am I seeing patterns where there shouldn't be any? Because what this data shows is not random, it's not chaotic, it's structured, and once you notice it, you can't unsee it. This visual right here tracks how long Bitcoin has historically taken to move from the absolute bottom of a market cycle to the absolute top. Not emotionally, not roughly, but mathematically measured in days, and when you line those cycles up, something truly wild appears. From the bottom of one market to the peak of the next, Bitcoin has consistently taken around 1,500 days. Not once, not twice, but again and again, cycle after cycle. In fact, if you look closely, the last two completed cycles both landed in almost the exact same time window, roughly 1,500 days from bottom to top. That alone is already fascinating. Markets are supposed to be unpredictable. Crypto is supposed to be chaotic. Bitcoin is supposed to be volatile beyond logic. And yet here we are, looking at a repeating time structure that refuses to break. But it gets even more interesting when you zoom out further and add the missing piece. This next chart looks complicated at first glance. But once you understand what it's showing, everything clicks into place. Instead of only tracking bottoms to tops, this chart alternates. It measures how long Bitcoin takes to move from an all-time low to an all-time high, and then from that all-time high back down to the next all-time low. In other words, it tracks the full emotional journey of the market. Hope, euphoria, collapse, despair, and then rebirth. Let's walk through it slowly. Back in 2015, Bitcoin hit an all-time low. The market was dead. Interest was gone. Most people had written it off completely. From that moment, Bitcoin began its long climb upward. And from that absolute low to the next absolute high, it took roughly 1,500 days. Then came the reversal. From the 2017 all-time high, Bitcoin didn't immediately recover. Instead, it entered a brutal bear market. Prices collapsed, confidence disappeared, and from that peak all the way down to the next all-time low, the journey took almost exactly 1 year. About 364 days. That symmetry alone is striking, but here's where it stops being coincidence. In 2018, after that all-time low was reached, Bitcoin began climbing again. New narratives emerged. New investors entered, adoption slowly expanded, and once again, from that all-time low to the next all-time high, the time it took was almost identical to before. Roughly 1,500 days. Then history repeated itself yet again. From the all-time high in 2021, Bitcoin fell into another bear market. Fear dominated headlines, leverage was flushed out, weak hands exited, and once again from that peak down to the next all-time low, the duration was almost exactly the same as before, around 364 days. At this point, we are no longer talking about randomness. We are looking at a rhythm, a heartbeat, a market structure that seems to oscillate between expansion and contraction on a very specific time scale. Now comes the part that truly bends your mind. If we follow this same pattern forward into the current cycle, something remarkable appears. From the most recent all-time low, Bitcoin has once again started climbing. And when we measure how long it took from that low to reach the latest all-time high in this cycle, the number lands right back in the same zone. Roughly 1,500 to 1,600 days, depending on how you measure it, around 1,560, or just over 1,060 days from certain reference points. Different data inputs, same conclusion. The market rhythm holds. And if that rhythm continues, if this alternating structure remains intact, then the next phase becomes predictable in one very specific way. Not in price, not in magnitude, but in time. Because if previous cycles are any guide after reaching an all-time high, Bitcoin does not immediately move sideways forever. It transitions, it corrects, it compresses, and historically, that transition from all-time high back down to all-time low has taken roughly 364 days. Which leads us to the present moment. The most recent all-time high occurred on October 6th of this year. That date matters, because if the historical pattern continues, if the market once again follows the same time-based structure it has followed before, then the next all-time low would statistically appear roughly 1 year from that point, not tomorrow, not next week, not even next month, but around 364 days later. Now, this does not mean price must crash. It does not mean history is guaranteed to repeat perfectly. Markets evolve, participants change, macro conditions shift, but what this analysis suggests is that Bitcoin is not as random as many believe. There is a cyclical behavior embedded deep into its structure, likely driven by human psychology, liquidity cycles, halving events, and the natural expansion and contraction of speculative capital. Fear and greed move slower than people think. They move in waves, and those waves have a measurable duration. Every cycle, the narrative changes, but the emotional journey remains the same. First disbelief, then curiosity, then optimism, then euphoria, then denial, then panic, then exhaustion, then silence, and finally renewal. Time after time. So when you see people arguing about short-term price movements, when you see daily noise dominate headlines, zooming out like this provides a completely different perspective. It reminds you that Bitcoin doesn't just move up or down, it moves through time, and time more than price is where the real structure lies. If this pattern continues, the market is not finished telling its story yet. We may still be in the middle chapters. And whether the next phase is painful or boring or quietly constructive, one thing remains clear. Bitcoin has a rhythm. And so far, it has been remarkably consistent. If you found this breakdown useful, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. Content like this focuses on understanding the deeper structure behind markets, not just reacting to price. Stay curious, stay patient, and I'll see you in the next one.